Now it is hog hunting time. What is hog hunting? We are going to watch some videos of some different Canadian content, political content creators, and assess if they are hogs or not hogs. Hogs being conservatives. Not just conservatives, but like the rubes. The ones who are duped by the just flat out evil conservatives, the ones who know that they are doing ill and doing it for their own purposes happily, and that they do that by dupe the hogs. So that's that. So these are all gonna be people that I, for the most part, have not watched their videos before. I may have certain impressions. I may have watched the first minute or two. Based on the first minute or two, having watched this one, I'm gonna presume a pretty good impression she's on the right side of things. So this is Queentiwa. I don't know. She appears to do some politics stuff, but not all politics. That's cool. 42,000 subscribers, which is not a lot, but it's sure a lot more than me. So let's get to it.
Hello, I am back again talking about Canadian politics. One of the most frequent comments that I got was, okay, how does the US election impact us? Unfortunately, there is most likely going to be a huge impact on us as Canadians.
Lord, again.
So I want to talk about everything from the economy to our trade, and how we're seeing a more conservative shift in Canada altogether. First and foremost, let's get it out of the way, the economy. Objectively speaking, Trump's plan could be a huge mess for us in Canada. For one, he's...
I mean, obviously. I'm assuming the first thing she's going to talk about is tariffs. And we'll get a lot of blowback from them shooting themselves in the foot with that.
Talked about putting a 10% tariff on all US imports, which will make literally everything more expensive for us.
It's so stupid. I'm not like a free trade evangelist or anything. It's complicated. The neoliberals have for a long time proselytized free trade as a concept, as an absolute good, as something that's good on its face that gives us cheaper stuff, whatever. But the reality is they want it so that they can charge us the same amount while manufacturing things much cheaper in much poorer countries. That's why we had NAFTA, so that they could make cars cheap with non-union labor in Mexico and then sell them to us and undercut our domestic manufacturing. So free trades are not on their face good. Free trade arrangements can be very good when you're doing it with peer countries, people who have labor protections, environmental protections, all that kind of stuff. When it's not just a way for corporations to do things cheaper and in a worse way somewhere else and charge us the same or more.
You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S.
It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things.
For those who don't know, a tariff is a tax added to imports, things coming into the country to make...
One of the funniest things is seeing people who voted for Trump after the fact discover what a tariff is. It's like, I know you're dumb. I know you're a victim of very effective propaganda, but man, this really seems like something you should have looked into beforehand, you know? Anyway, let's see. In the United States, yes, it's a tax. Awesome.
Make them more expensive. It's theoretically done to encourage people to buy more local goods, but for us who buy a lot of things from the US, especially considering that the US is our #1 trade partner, we're cooked.
Yeah. Oh, shit. You know, I didn't even think about that. It's not just our economy not being able to get as much return on selling things into the United States because of tariffs. It's that like everything we buy from the States, which is like a lot, although things aren't really made in the States anymore. But just as a general principle, I hadn't considered that our costs will go up because they're self-imposed cost raising. Like things made in China, imported to the States, then sold to us. Along the way, we get that tariff. That's really shitty.
Why does that matter to us as Canadians? Because higher prices or inflation as we know it could mean that their Federal Reserve or their central bank would be less likely to lower interest rates. So
less likely lower interest rates, which I guess we want. I mean, Canada just started turning around and they aren't usually high. We got into a lot of problems because they're basically put down to zero. So we don't want them to go too low because that creates a whole series of perverse incentives, as we're discovering. Say that again.
Federal Reserve, or because higher prices or inflation as we know it could mean that...
So she's saying that tariffs will cause an artificially imposed inflation, which will make them less likely to reduce the rates, which they do to stimulate the economy. And even though we don't want to go too low, we want it lower than it is now. And that will be inhibited. Okay.
Their Federal Reserve or their central bank would be less likely to lower interest rates. Okay. So if the US keeps their rates steady or even just increases them a little bit, this is going to impact Canadians who have loans, credit or mortgages. Rising rates means that borrowing money becomes more expensive. Yay! Who's ready for their mortgage to increase? And then on top of that...
So I don't think we have to worry about interest rates increasing because they're already really high. I mean, historically, I think they've been, excuse me.
Hello, I am back
high.
Again talking about Canadian
Rates, history. Yeah, so where's the chart? Give me a chart. Yeah. So, oh my God. Yeah, that's pretty high. I mean, I don't think I've ever been that high. Wow. Like 80? 1980? I heard it used to be high. I think I've seen this before, but like, I can't imagine. I mean, we're fucking dying with like 6% and whew. Right. And then here it's Reaganomics, lower interest rate, continuously fillet businesses as hard as you can, free trade agreements, all that bullshit. And then as the economy is dying, they keep lowering interest rates to keep putting on life support, and then they get to a place where they can't lower it anymore, and it all just collapses. Cool. So we're starting to go down again, but man, this is like the apocalypse. Get back to that.
That if the Canadian dollar falls in comparison to the US dollar, we would be...
I mean, it's already like 3/4.
We would be paying even more money for imported goods like food or electronics.
Yeah.
So all of this results in something called the ripple effect. And as a result, Canadians are going to feel their wallets getting yanked. Like, it is going to get so much more expensive for us if he decides to introduce that 10% tariff on all imports.
It's a big if. Trump, of course, has no soul, and he just says what he thinks people want to hear in whatever room he's in. But I think he is stupid enough that he has a core belief of tariffs. And the question is, the question is to what degree the cretins in his orbit will be able to convince him that it's incredibly stupid without making him feel stupid, because then he just doubles down because he's very stupid. Because the business interests, the true vampires among us, they don't want tariffs. They want free trade. They want to be able to make things cheap elsewhere and then sell them domestically. That's their whole thing. That's their whole deal. So there will be a tension between his buffoonery and complete ignorance about these sort of things with the people who know about these sort of things but are evil. And I mean, what it will likely come down to, and I've heard this somewhere else and it makes sense to me, is that he's lazy and stupid and doesn't want to do any work. And so the people around him who he tasks with doing this will be the ones who have to go around and figuring out micromanaging tariffs sector by sector, country by country. His owners, the people who put him in the White House, will not let him do a blanket high tariff. That's just all there is to it.
Unfortunately, it's not just the economy that we need to worry about. Trump's win is most likely going to shake up things here socially and politically in Canada. We see a lot of people talking about how Pierre is going to be the solution to all our problems.
Yeah.
Hey, hold on, this shit ain't funny. It ain't funny, but it is.
As he is
It's the embodiment of all the problems. Yeah.
Leader of the Conservative Party. And I'm like, wow, this is a very unfortunate turn of events. While freedom of
Okay. I see what you did there.
speech allows people to criticize the government, it's very shocking how aggressive and mainstream this rhetoric has become. Online and even in person, we're seeing this rising rhetoric of just being anti-immigration.
This is just, and so now they're doing the wrong thing, as they always do, and attacking right and trying to be conservative light to appeal to all the hogs who are victims of conservative propaganda. And liberals aren't going to counter that messaging because they're just going to agree with them and say, yeah, but we'll try to do it less, please.
Or anti-minority.
I think there are too many immigrants coming into Canada currently.
And do you know how many immigrants? Do you know how hard it is to be an immigrant, to get your qualifications, to... Like, let's just go on a little tangent here, okay? This country was built on genocide, all right? I mean, we know this. That's always, something I can hold over the United States. Like, they were built on slavery and genocide. We were just built on genocide. But we got a big country here. We got a wealth of resources, a wealth of land. We can accommodate a lot, okay? And we are part of a system that impoverishes and destroys a lot of the world. And we benefit a lot from that. We are a glorified colony of the United States. We are part of the broader Anglosphere, which has been running the world since the 1700s. And we are part of everything that makes everything bad for everyone outside the Anglosphere. And in my view, humbly, the only way we can begin to make up for that as a country is to be a place people can come. To make this not just a place for the people who are shit up everywhere. The only way we can begin to move in the direction of balancing moral scales, even though it's never possible, would be to be a place that's very welcoming to people trying to escape all the shit we have caused everywhere. So I don't agree, but I understand places in Europe that are reticent about immigration because they do have, you know, a historical and geographical contiguity and a national identity that is shaped over a long period of time. I mean, I don't think anybody should be... I'm getting off track here. The point is, we are an immigrant country. We espouse values of multiculturalism, and we did a genocide. And I think it's the least we can do to be a safe haven for people to escape all the shit that the Anglosphere has suffered them. So this pisses me off.
All Canadians now say that there are too many immigrants in Canada.
Especially when you see...
This is why I'm so sick and tired of all these Indians. No. You know how there's like 9 of them in an apartment? Bro.
People are
This is what I love. I love seeing people who visibly embody the nexus of hate of conservatives regurgitating conservative propaganda about hating people that they would otherwise think of as themselves. It's like all the Latinos voting for Trump and saying, but I'm a good one. He's not going to deport me. And it's like, he doesn't care. You're operating on a different metric of people being good or bad. He's operating on a different metric of people being white or Latino. Do you understand the difference? Like, the people, this person, I don't really understand what he was saying, but if this person is espousing conservative propaganda, the people he is supporting see you as the problem. Cat wants out. I'm gonna let it play.
All these, no. You know how there's like 9 of them in an apartment? Bro.
people are openly blaming immigrants and people of color for taking their jobs.
They took your job! Take your jobs!
Or draining resources, echoing the same fear-based messages that we see in the US. But the reality...
Right, so it's basic fear, scapegoating and fear-mongering and fascism, right? This is like, I just did a stream with my friend watching V for Vendetta, and it's, you know, a cartoon depiction of 2005, which is now just reality in 2024. And yes, conservative and neoliberal policies have created an economic nightmare, and now their only move left, because the soaking machine... You just got blood out! You do this again, you get sprayed. Come on, I'm not leaving. Jesus. Ugh, the fuck was I saying? Right, the horrible economic situation we're in, which was wrought by conservatives and neoliberals, now that they have set up the money-soaking machine, which soaks from the general public up to the extremely wealthy, it is working as intended, but we're starting to... Hey! Go! You complain again, you get the hose. Anyway. The fuck was I saying? Right. They set up the money-soaking machine. Yep, that's the hose. They set up the money-making machine. And now as the consequences for actual people are getting worse and worse over time as a result, instead of pointing out why or doing anything to fix it, all that's left is scapegoating. And the easiest target are immigrants and progressive policies, which have never been enacted, but are somehow to blame. And that's where we are. We call that fascism. When the elites break the system for their own gain and then tell us it's the least powerful who are responsible. It's like how the most powerful people in the world set up a situation where our environment is dying, and then they tell us we have to use paper straws and we have to suffer and we have to sacrifice to solve the problem that they created and are still profiting from. Anyway.
The reality is Canada has a long history of relying on immigration to fill in the gaps in our workforce, as well as boost our economy and keep our economy strong. But this shift in public opinion shows how
immigration is good for the economy. Immigrants are the hardest working people in the country. I'm fucking lazy. I was born here. I've known privilege to a limited degree, but privilege my whole life. And I am fat and happy and comfortable. Not literally, but you get what I'm saying. But immigrants who come in, especially people who come from bad situations, like refugees who come from bad situations and are just so thrilled to be here and so thrilled to be able to have a life and so thrilled to just work a job and not be shot at all day. And our merit-based immigration system, whether you like that system or not, targets people who are extremely productive. It's all win. And yes, that creates other problems, but those problems are not because of bad policy, but I'm sure we'll get into that. But yes, immigrants are extremely productive and they're very unlikely to crime.
How deeply these ideas are starting to influence Canadian views. And you know what? It's not just immigrants or people of color that are facing this backlash. There's also this growing resistance to issues that the left has traditionally supported, like gender equality and women's rights. We are seeing...
Oh yeah, and you think your abortion rights are secure in Canada? Yeah, let's see how that works out with a poly-over majority. Because he has no soul, and he has no integrity, and he would send every fucking one of us to the pit if it allowed him to hold on to power. So there will come a time when he has to placate his fundamentalist evangelical base, and he'll give them that. And That'll be it. And then there'll be a law where we haven't had one before, which is the correct situation. Sorry.
Anti-women sentiments become way more open than before.
But we know that 100% of Conservative MPs voted against contraception, free contraception for women. You're against a woman's right to choose and have a...
Well, you see, women shouldn't be sluts. And if you need contraception and need abortions, an abortion, you're a slut. And you're having sex the wrong way, and you're not having sex the way we think you should. And you need to be punished for that with pregnancy, as God intended. Jesus Christ.
Autonomy over her own body.
With people actively saying that gender equality initiatives are unnecessary, a waste of funding, or are holding men back.
Yeah. And look at me. I've said for a long ass time, I'm a straight white man. I have no excuse for not being able to figure it out. In this country.
These views are spilling over from similar conservative trends from the US.
I once had a late night argument with somebody at a bar I was working at, and I could not get him to accept or acknowledge this fundamental principle. He's one of these this was 10 years ago, but at the time he would have been, talking to any young 20-something and voted for Trump today. But I could not get him to accept and acknowledge that, yes, things are difficult for him, admittedly very difficult. But however difficult things are for you, they would be more difficult if you were a woman, or black, or disabled, or whatever. And he just said, well, no, things are bad for me. It's like, yeah, but... Anyway.
Where we've seen backlash against what critics would call woke policies.
The things that we don't have and have never been implemented and aren't even defined.
And I honestly think right-wing politicians like Pierre have been able to tap into this frustration. Pierre and his team often focus on issues that directly affect people's wallets, like inflation, or the fact that his slogan is "Axe the Tax," and cost of living.
This year, we're going to go over 1.5 degrees Celsius in global temperatures above pre-industrial levels. Now, it's at 2 degrees that the climate just implodes and global weather patterns shift, and the climate could literally shift to something else that is just fundamentally unlivable for humans. 1.5 is just where large swaths of the planet become... Large swaths is an exaggeration. I don't like exaggerations. Half of Africa. Pretty much everything around the equator, from the southern United States to North South America. Not those places. Equatorial Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, India, that whole region, southern United States. At 1.5, those places just become occasionally fatal to exist as a human being. It just so happens those are the poorest places in the world, or some of the poorest places where they don't have access to air conditioning.
Living, which...
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't have him on my screen. So we're already at the point where a lot of people are going to die for 40 years of favoring capital over practicality and human habitability of the planet. And the one thing that our government did to woefully inadequately address the issue is his number one campaign item to do away with. Something that was economically neutral for people. They get credits back. I mean, it's not perfect. I'm not even saying it's a good system, but the fact that we're all going to die, and his top campaign platform is to take out the only thing that was in any way attempting to do anything about it, well, it makes me mad. And replace it with nothing. It's like how in the States, their healthcare system is a nightmare. And they did Obamacare to make it a tiny bit less shitty. And now, ever since the Republican healthcare plan has been take away that thing that made it a little less shitty and do nothing else. And this is Polly Ever with the fucking carbon tax.
Resonate strongly in tough economic times. If people can't even go out to afford their groceries, and you have a political candidate saying, I'm going to do all that it takes to make sure that you can afford your groceries, and you can buy a home, and you can do this and that, obviously it's going to resonate to someone who can't do those things right now. And as a result, they can very easily start to...
And who oftentimes can't do those things because of conservative neoliberal policies that he's all for and doubles down on.
Shift towards that right-wing propaganda.
Shouldn't our working class be better off today than it was 40 years ago?
How do we get that way, Pierre? How do we fucking get there? Your owners, the ones you work for, the fucking ones who put us here.
This system is broken. It protects
you broke it.
Privileged.
We don't need elites. Elites. There's just
Said the career politician. Said the definition of an elite.
One hitch. Pierre Poilievre has spent his entire political career serving the very elites he vilifies.
Some members of his party are active
supplicating himself, which sounds more sexual than it is, which makes it a fun word.
Pushing to roll back progressive policies that we have in Canada. And I genuinely believe that social media has really amplified this anger and frustration that a lot of people have towards different groups in this country. Media personalities, and even
that's why I'm here.
Everyday Canadians spreading misinformation or just exaggerating fears, often blaming outsiders or left-wing policies for the problems that they're facing.
Which have not been implemented. Can't stress that enough.
For issues that are much more complex than that.
I think it's more complex than that.
Yeah, dude has been doing this for 32.
I think it's more complex than that. I gotta figure out how to insert, like, video clips.
I think it's more complex than that.
I already got one from doing the V for Vendetta thing. Want to see it?
Surprise, motherfucker. Surprise, motherfucker.
There's a lot of situations where that'd be good. I gotta make it not repeat on play, though.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Anyway, this is how you look when you blame immigrants for why groceries. My God, I know. And this is what I mean about conservatives being either ignorant or evil. Because the ones who are evil know that they are championing the things that create the problems and continue to want to do that because they benefit from it, and then do propaganda to the people who are easily manipulated to support them, who are the other side, the just ignorant, right? So it's always like are you the people who are creating the problem and manipulating people, or are you just one of the people who are manipulated? And you have a lot of sympathy for one, and you need to do something about the others, non-violently, of course.
2 years. #1 clown, 9 straight years.
And I honestly think because of this and because of what's been happening in the US, it has directly impacted Canadians. And Canada's political landscape as a whole has become way more divided. The cost of living is insanely high. Housing prices are out of control. And people are feeling squeezed financially. But instead of...
Yeah, I mean, she's absolutely right. Housing is, of course, a huge issue. And like most things that are a huge issue in our world, they are a huge issue because we resist doing the thing that would actually solve the problem, which is just build f***ing housing. Part of it is, at some point in the last years, in the housecape ushered in by Reaganism, there was a turn towards a big emphasis on home ownership, and that's created a lot of problems. Obviously, there's, very obvious benefits to home ownership, but having it as the idea of everyone owning their own home as a absolute good to be working towards creates a lot of problems. One of them is that it creates like a boom cycle where prices keep going up because everybody's trying to buy it, and there's no incentive to build rental housing, and there's no political appetite for building public housing, which can be great. It makes me just, when I'm not angry, I'm sad about how much money and effort we spend as a country, as a community, as a planet on avoiding doing the thing that would solve the actual problem for a lot less. And that applies in so many things, and it's infuriating, and that's why I'm progressive.
Looking at the wider causes of these problems, many people are just finding
Whoa. We can't do root causes. That's a deep cut.
an easy target in immigrants or the liberal government or this and that. There's way more layers to this. And this directly mirrors Trump's impact on the US. Where people were drawn towards those populist ideas. Populism, by the way, is a type of approach that claims to represent the common people against the elite. So they'll say things like, you know what, we're going to cut the taxes, we're going to make life more affordable for you, and then as soon as they get power...
She's not wrong, but populism is a two-sided coin. Populism can be good, and it can be very bad. Fascism is a kind of populism, but a leftist progressive movement can also be led in a populist sense. Like the Bernie Sanders movement was very populist. It was focused on people and individuals. So I don't know if she's going to go on with this, but I don't like the linguistic implication that populism is synonymous with fascist populism. My other cat is trying to get in now. Are you going to be annoying? Or are you just a couple hours early for your food? Come here. There you go. All right.
All that money goes right to their besties that are already billionaires, and it goes towards private interest, and it goes towards wealthy lobbyists. And then you're wondering, okay, so you said that you were going to help us. Why is bread $20? That is...
As she knows, the plan was never to help you. The plan was to scapegoat, to continue to rob you, and have you thank me for it.
Is exactly how populism works. And then it always
fascist populism.
Gets people. It always makes them feel like, you know what, I think they're going to help the economy. And then they never do. Overall, we're in a
right, because they champion the reasons why it's failing.
Time when Canadians are becoming increasingly polarized and right-wing populism is gaining ground. The louder and more aggressive anti-liberal and anti-minority rhetoric we're seeing is very much a part of that. If this continues, we will see Canada's political landscape be just as divided as the US is, with more hostility towards minority groups, immigrants, and progressive.
I mean, she's right. With the minor caveat that we have so far to fall before becoming as bad as the United States. Yes, that's a microphone. We can get worse and more US-like, and that's disastrous. Do you have to put your ass on the microphone? Yes, you do? Yeah, okay. I forgot what I was saying.
Policies that would benefit all of us. All right, so now let's talk about trade. About 75% of Canada's exports go to the US. And as I said before, Trump's 10% tariff idea could make it more expensive for American businesses to buy our stuff. This could...
Yes, but I don't think they have Canada in mind. That might be naive, but he's talking about China, not us. In fact, he's probably on board with Doug Ford coming out. Rob Ford, sorry. I don't even know anymore. Do you have to put your ass on the microphone? Is that like a thing that you gotta do? Okay. The Ford, that is currently Premier of Ontario, is now agitating for kicking Mexico out of NAFTA, or what became of NAFTA, or killing NAFTA and negotiating just a trade deal with us. So I think the good and bad people on both sides both recognize that a free trade between scheme between Canada and the United States, if no one else, is good. So I'm not so worried about that.
Really hit Canada's economy. Economists have estimated that if Trump's tariffs goes through, Canada could see a drop of $7 billion in GDP loss. GDP stands for the gross domestic product, or the total value of goods and services that Canada produces. That's a big chunk of our economy at risk. So this type of trade shock could only make things more difficult for us. And then on top of that, in 2026, we are set to renegotiate our big trade deal with the US and Mexico. So we used to have NAFTA, so now we have...
Right, and now it has mandatory renegotiations because they're f***ing...
USMCA, which is the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. This deal allows goods and services to move easily between these countries with fewer restrictions, making trade cheaper and more efficient for all three countries. However, what a lot of Canadian economists are worried about is that Trump could push for harsher terms for Canada in the next negotiations, meaning our negotiators will need to be on the ball to make sure that they...
Right. There were some sore spots. Things like, could you not rub your ass on the microphone? Okay, you're going to lap. Oh, you
protect our interests. All right, so next up we have the...
Sorry, what I was going to say is, you stay. There were some sore spots in renegotiating NAFTA. One of them is perennially supply management with dairy, I think. So we'll probably lose that. I don't have a lot to say about it. God damn it, Cat.
The shifting media landscape and the social media influence. So this is kind of similar to what I was saying in part 2, where the political landscape in Canada is already starting to shift towards the right wing. But this just ties into the further media and misinformation that we're seeing right now in Canada. With Bill C-11, the Canadian government tried to limit the American-owned... Bill C-11, the Canadian...
Right. That was the one that all the social media companies were getting their panties in a bunch about.
The Canadian government tried to limit the American-owned media dominance that we see. However, obviously there are a lot of criticisms of this bill as well, because again, this goal was meant to regulate online content and to just make sure that Canadian content is more visible to us. But the problem was that as a result, we're not seeing Canadian news content at all on social media, especially on Instagram. So for example, platforms like Facebook have stopped showing Canadian news altogether. So we're not seeing that on Facebook or Instagram. This has...
To be fair, you shouldn't be on Facebook at all, and you certainly shouldn't be getting your news from Facebook or Instagram. Not that I think she's saying you should.
Left a gap where garbage pages like 6buzz are able to absolutely thrive and spread misinformation.
That's a great point and aspect that I hadn't considered before. Yeah, it's not just that these platforms are not showing Canadian content, it's that it creates a vacuum that's filled by American garbage, and people are seeing that instead. Oh, that's a real problem. That's a real problem. God damn.
And just get people riled up, despite the fact that a lot of the stuff they post is not even rooted in truth.
It was all a lie.
Well, yeah.
Guys, it was all a lie.
Did you
Do you
know?
want to go out? It's not food time.
Did you know that TikTok is now banned in Canada? Thoughts? And it's like, this is how you spread misinformation. And it doesn't help that now we can't really access different news pages on Facebook and Instagram. Now we have...
Again, you should not. Again, I don't think she's saying you should, but people should definitely not be getting their news from Facebook and Instagram. Hold on. There we go. That's how I feel about that.
We have more Canadians consuming information that is just not reliable or just not being verified, which only leads to the spread of Trump-style populist ideas.
Okay, seriously, what is this? What is lucid mode? I don't like
Even
it.
if they're
Is that
not
why
based
she's
in
been looking weird?
facts, it's
Yeah,
still
okay.
spreading like wildfire. Populist ideas. Even if they're not based in facts, it's still spreading like wildfire. This
God damn it, cat. Shut the fuck up. Okay, go. Go. Yes, go away. You get the hose next time. All right. By the way, who the fuck is watching? Is one viewer me? Because it can't be this person who immediately started trying to sell me things. Whatever.
This shift makes it easier for Canadian politics to be swayed by sensationalist or misleading content. But what is sensationalism? It's the use of exciting or shocking stories or language at the expense of accuracy. So it's when people are like, did you know that the world is going to end tomorrow? And it's like not even rooted in any truth, but it gets people anxious and riled up or even excited. And that's essentially what sensationalism is, and that is unfortunately what we are experiencing right now. And they do all of that just to provoke public interest.
Sensationalism.
It doesn't matter if what they are creating is causing more harm.
Sensationalizing the step sibling stuck in the dryer of scapegoating. I'm sorry. Lord, I apologize.
Harm than good, as long as they get engagement. So with that being said, you might be wondering, okay, what does this mean for Canada's political future? I honestly think that overall, Trump's win in the US is a reminder of how American politics can affect us, whether we like it or not. With more Canadians...
I heard an expression, when the United States sneezes, Canada catches a cold. They are just this rabid, rampaging moose in our living room that we can't stop and can't do anything about and just have to deal with the consequences of.
With more Canadians starting to lean towards conservative messages, we might be seeing the beginning of a shift over here as well. And
it's not because conservative politics are good, it's because there's unrest, because the situation is kind of shitty. And yeah, I'm glad I watched V for Vendetta recently because it kind of lays it all out. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that right now.
Fortunately, if we're not careful, we might find ourselves in a political climate that's even more polarized than the US. Because keep in mind, we got even
more. This is something I wanted to get into at some point about why Canadian politics is not as interesting. She's saying that it would become more polarized, but my first impression, so I'm very curious what she has to say, would be that because we have a more diverse politics. Step back a moment. One of the reasons I think that American politics is so much more compelling is there's two teams, and one's going to win and one's going to lose. And I mean, it's very easy for dumber people to understand and to participate in, but it's also like much higher stakes. It's much more winner take all. It's much more blue team, red team. Like it's a sports ball game. Whereas here, it's more complicated than that.
I think it's more complex than that.
We have multiple parties. We have the possibility of minority situation. We have the possibility, I know Canadians aren't comfortable with this for some reason, but we can do coalition governments. It's more nuanced, and people don't like nuance. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm curious to see why she thinks we could become more polarized in the United States, because my impression is that the way our political system is structured, we would be less prone to be more polarized.
even more parties. And it is up to us to rise than the US. Because keep in mind, we got even more parties. And it is up
so she thinks, she's saying that because we have more parties, we have more poles to be polarized around. More teams to retreat to. That makes sense on some level, but I think it's more likely that it's a neutralizing factor, that compromise is more likely. Because blue-red, it's like, well, yeah, Kamala Harris sucks, but he's a fascist. Like, it's hard to do, but what about the other guy? Because there is another viable option, always, for us, unlike there. It's worth thinking of.
Up to us to stay informed. You have to stay critical of what you see online. Make sure that you're fact-checking. Make sure you're doing your own research.
Make sure you're watching the right channels.
Ask questions.
And doing your own research is such a loaded term. You can do some real dog shit research on your own. I mean, yes, I ascribe to that principle in general, but I think it is much more important to cultivate good sources, people that you can rely on to deliver you information that you don't have the opportunity or time because you're busy to look up yourself. This, of course, creates a danger of becoming over-invested in somebody who is saying incorrect things to you. So I think it is more practical to be vigilantly scrutinizing of trusted sources than to try to be your own source, if that makes sense. And where possible, follow closely people who have some disagreements amongst each other, if not, but it would be impractical for it to be polar opposites.
And most importantly, make sure that you're supporting Canadian values. It might be funny to be like, oh, I support Trump. You're not American. Mind your business. Figure out ways that you can support Canadian politics, learn more about it, and get the ball rolling from there. We shouldn't just be
Again, that's why I'm here.
echoing trends of
screaming into the void
what's going on in the States. But yeah, that is my explanation of how the recent Trump win affects us as Canadians. I really do hope that my breakdown was useful. If you guys have any other questions or things that you want me to explain about Canada in general or Canadian politics, please let me know, because I am just always trying to learn. But yes, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching my video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's just keep talking about how we can make things better here in Canada and stay focused on Canadian issues. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Okay. So I'm going to say Queentiwa, definitely not a hog, and she's great. And I have comment on some things she says, but she's in the right place and on the right page, and you should all follow her and like her as I do. Yeah, she's got list of resources. That's great. Yeah. She's got the TikTok and the Instagram. K-pop blog. Sure. A work visa in Korea. Oh, yeah. Right. Some of her other videos deal with do not date in Korea. So yeah, she's not exclusively a politics person. Looks like she used to do more travel. Oh, her name is Queentiwa. She was sincere apologies if not, or if I'm saying it wrong. You know, there are some videos here that I would be very interested in reviewing in the future. That's great. Love this. It looks like more recently she's been getting to politics. I don't know if she's adjusting her focus or if it's just very November 2024.